there, and welcome to What You Need to Know, a Canadian Polycast. I'm Alison Fair, a senior consultant at Blue Sky Strategy Group. And as always, I have the pleasure of being joined by my colleagues. Today I have Jeff Turner, Vice President, and Greg Lurtz, a consultant both with Blue Sky. Hi guys, how are you?
Hello.
Hey, Alison, doing good.
Great. I wanted to start off first, something that I want our clients to think about, as there's a lot of talk about the Conservatives and, polls and majorities and all that kind of stuff. But it was something that came out in the last week or so that had Poilievre basically targeting what we do as a profession and what our clients do. And let's have a look. This is from our friends at CTV. Let's have a listen to what Poilievre had to say.
And this is my first time speaking to a business association or of this type, is because my experience with the corporate lobbyists in Ottawa, the main groups there, have been that they have been utterly useless in advancing any common sense interests for the people on the ground.
All right, guys. So there we go. Poilievre saying lobbyists are utterly useless, and that he prefers spending time with workers, not businesses or the corporate class, I guess we could say. Greg, because you are one of the people in our office who put blue in Blue Sky, I just want to talk to you, get your thoughts on that. What do you think this means for our clients who are hearing this, and what do we need to consider about in the government relations space?
Yeah, thanks, Alison. I want to unpack a little bit of what Poilievre himself means there. So for those who have been around, who remember Poilievre from his finance critic days, this is classic Poilievre. This is Poilievre to a T. He's speaking his mind and he's telling you exactly what he's thinking. Poilievre has a habit of doing this, of actually telling people exactly what he's thinking. Poilievre is not here as leader of the Conservative Party trying to become Prime Minister of Canada to make friends with the elites and the political mucky-mucks. He's doing this because he believes in workers and everyday Canadians, and he wants to go in and lift them up, and he wants government to work for the people. He's said it numerous times. I think when you look at examples of ways that government has mismanaged that mandate over the last number of years, you can start pulling a lot out. But even recently, you look at something like the Arrive Scam scandal, where you've got $60 million plus that's been wasted by government. That's taxpayer money. That's something that could have gone to fund a different program. That's something that could have gone to pay down the debt. That's something that could have gone to spend money on your kids' futures. Instead, it's gone down a hole for an app that could have been made in $80,000 and was made in a weekend by some guys for kicks.
Is this something we need to pay attention to? Is this something that Poilievre actually means what he says?
I think Poilievre does mean what he says, but if you listen to his words closely, I mean, what he says, my message to corporate Canada, and I'm quoting here, is that when I'm Prime Minister, if you want any of your policy agenda pushed forward, you're going to have to convince not just me, but the people of Canada that it is good for them. And that right there, this is what we do here in the lobbying world. We go and we take good ideas from business and we help government understand why this is better for Canadians. This is exactly what we do at Blue Sky. This is exactly what we're going to continue to do. It doesn't change a large amount of lobbying. It just means you have to be a bit more overt about telling the Conservatives that that's what you're doing.
Okay. Greg, I'm sorry, Jeff, I see you nodding your head there. Is that what we do when we think about approaching, different politicians? Is this something that we make sure our clients know about? And as you said, I see you, kind of shaking your agreement with Greg. What's your thoughts to his comments?
Yeah, I'm really glad he finished there because it's where I was going to start. So let me try to find some other places to talk about. But it is that, I think our clients know, and I'm really glad that we're using this space to talk about this, stakeholders. And it does an okay job at consulting, sometimes better, sometimes worse. But the usefulness of government relations and lobbying on, getting that information into government where they do not have it. Sometimes, yes, turning around bad decisions that they have made, usually because of an information vacuum or oversight. We've had clients where I think just somebody in a department got a bright idea one day, didn't think it through, put some things into a policy that were completely unworkable for, a sector or a particular interest. And, it was in the exchange of saying, hey, we don't think you actually realize that you caught all this up. And they go, oh, no, we didn't realize we caught all this up. How do we all fix it? And that's the interface that we provide. So I'm really glad that we touched on that there. On the politics, though, because that's also what we talk about here. I mean, it is clearly a message. Mr. Poilievre has been refusing audiences at speaking clubs, at Empire clubs, and Canadian clubs, and economic clubs, and business chambers of commerce. The Business Council of Canada, which I jokingly like to call the union for CEOs, they can't get a meeting with the guy. And I think that's all very smart strategy. And it started with Doug Ford in Ontario, with Conservatives getting over their kind of old ways of being, anti-union, sort of pro-corporate, sort of libertarian economics, if I can put it that way. And that has changed. They're courting the union vote. They're trying to talk about workers. I think that's generally a good thing. And I think all parties are kind of on the same page, interestingly, on those topics. When I see the politics of this, though, and I watch that clip and I listen to that clip, I can't help but hear another message coded for businesses to listen to. And I don't know if it's good advice. I think, Mr. Poilievre, of course, is well known, goes around blaming Justin Trudeau for everything. If he stubbed his toe yesterday, it's Justin Trudeau's fault. And in lots of those cases, of course,
as an opposition leader.
It is. And of course, the Prime Minister has a lot to do with a lot of policies, and a lot of policies he doesn't agree with. But I think we all know that the strategy is to blame Justin Trudeau for absolutely everything, and that's going to continue for the next year and a half. What I heard in that statement was, what I want, if you want to be a business that's in well with me, I want you to go out and name the Prime Minister. That's what he's asking for. Okay. And I don't think, my advice, and I will, of course, always declare I am a liberal, so I'm not going to hide that fact in my next comment, but I think that's not good strategy. And I think most of our clients and most of the people in this space understand that, A, they have to work with whoever's there, and they have to work with whoever's going to be there. And they do that by being straightforward about what it is they're trying to do, why they're trying to do it, to our earlier comment, the case for doing it. And, if you want to throw a temper tantrum, that's fine if it makes you feel better, but it's usually not going to get you what you're trying to get. And so I think, that's the coded message I heard a little bit, because it sure would help him out, right, in keeping the momentum and being able to use other people, say, oh, well, look, if this big business over here says it's all Justin Trudeau's fault too, it must be true what I'm saying too. Right. And so I think that's the coded message I took away from it. I don't know how many businesses are going to pick, big businesses or reputable kind of national or others who are going to pick up on that message, but obviously that remains to be seen in the next year and a half of what we expect to be the tenure of this government.
Right. And as you said, it's a year and a half away, but we still have to keep an eye on this stuff and check the pulse of what's going on in Parliament Hill there. Speaking of the pulse of Parliament Hill, we have a big day that comes up every year here in Ottawa that everyone looks forward to. It's Budget Day, and we know that it will be April 16th. That's the day Chrystia Freeland will present the next budget for the year. Thinking about what we just talked about, what our clients want and are looking for from a government. Greg, I want to start with you. Can you tell me what you are expecting to see or would like to see from this year's budget?
What I'd like to see from this year's budget: axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime.
Okay, that's your blue pitch.
We know I can't have what I'd like to see in this budget. So turning to what I'd expect to see, the reality is for the next year and a half, this is an affordability government. This is an affordability election. It's not a carbon tax election. It's not the one that Poilievre was trying to get with his Opposition Day motion last week. But it is an affordability election. It's going to be in a year and a half. There's a long runway. This government likely has another budget in it. So this isn't the final kick at the can, but there needs to be concrete measures showing that there's real affordability changes. And it doesn't matter what policy's been announced, what thing has changed on a government level, what the politicians are doing as they run around post-budget talking with Canadians. What matters is, am I paying less for rent? Am I paying less for food? Can I afford a house? Is my standard of living better? For those under 35, the Canadian Happiness Index came out this past week and Canada dropped. But we didn't drop because of the older generations. We dropped because the under 35s are facing a very bleak future. They can't afford a home. They're struggling to pay rent. They can't afford groceries. And this is something where it's very difficult for the government to announce a new program, to go and announce new spending in a budget. That's 1,000 feet away from where Canadians are, where young Canadians are. They're not looking at government, they're looking at their pocketbooks. And so this upcoming budget, the Liberals have to keep working to go and ensure that in the next year and a half, they've made concrete action and concrete progress on making life more affordable for Canadians, or they're going to get swept away.
And we all know from past elections that the younger generations in Canada are the targets. We know where the older generations lie in terms of their political leanings, but that younger generation is the one that they are really focusing on. Jeff, going to you and putting your financial cap on based on your experience, what are you hoping to see in budget 2024?
Just again, want to say I agree with most of what Greg said, at least the back 8/10 of that. The non-slogany part, which is good. We can find common ground when we're not just throwing slogans around. But
right.
On the budget, I think, listen, I agree with Greg that there needs to be some real tangible action. Let me just back it up a bit. I mean, when I was privileged enough to be working on an Ontario budget, 7 years ago, we were still, even then, in the mid-2010s, in the environment where the whole exercise was definitely oriented to getting clips on the news, stories in the newspaper, to be able to get your message of a budget through. It was one of the very few big bangs that you had in your arsenal of communicate, not just communication, obviously policy and financial components of what you're doing, but in terms of reaching, to Greg's point, reaching and getting through to people about what you're trying to do in the next year and more. That was still the kind of old way, and that world has fallen away so quickly. And to Greg's point about demographics as well, we live in a time where it's a bit of the upside down world. Everything is moving. Previous coalitions are splintering. There's talk, even just in the last few days, like, does the center even exist anymore? Are people being really driven out? And this is not a surprise to people who are following just current events and the discussion going on around them. So is a budget, to get back to my point, the way to get through on that? And I think the answer more and more is no. People who pay attention to budgets will pay attention anyway. There are not really any newspapers to write about things anymore. There are very few TV stations, and even your radio stations are all disappearing now too. And even if they are still in your community, you're going to get a 5-minute news run at the top. Maybe they'll talk about the one thing that was in the budget that everybody was talking about, but not more. So the budget itself, I think, and especially for the Liberals in their political predicament right now, I really hope they are not investing their mental energy in trying to make the budget their big thing. Something big has to happen from the Liberals. Like, if it doesn't, like, they're not going to just sort of steer the ship for the next year, or else, to Greg's point, they're going to be just toast. Like, they got to do something big. It's got to come soon, and it's got to punch through. And a budget isn't necessarily the way to do that. So, putting that aside, not sure where that's going to come from, or what, or how big, or I'm sure whatever it may be is probably the best kept secret in Ottawa right now.
Right.
But the budget itself, I think, as a consequence of this, and what we're expecting and hearing from our contacts and seeing unfold now, is most of this budget will be announced before the day of the budget.
Okay.
So over the coming 2.5 weeks, I already know there are a number of announcements lined up. I will, some of our clients know I also head up the Canadian Club here in Ottawa. We just confirmed Minister Fraser for an affordable housing discussion 5 days before the budget. So I wonder if there might be an announcement for people to pay attention to. Stay tuned to your email inbox. The Canadian Club will be inviting you shortly. But all I'd say is expect all of that kind of big stuff. And that's also a tried and true tactic. You want to be able to get the news out in increments, so that somebody sees something more than once, or they see it, this today, and this the next day, and this the day after that. And then we'll see what that other big bang is. So the budget's going to be a big deal. Last thing I'll say about, to Greg's point, is I think this is the last budget where they have to sew up a few of their governing things. So we do a lot of work in investment tax credits, for example, on clean tech and on, carbon sequestration and hydrogen and all these things. These have been moving for 3 or 4 years now. They are really kind of at close to the finish line, if I can say. So this is sort of the last opportunity for them to high that up, because you sure don't want to be talking about hydrogen tax credits in your budget that's going into an election, right? So I think there's a lot of those loose ends across the whole totality of government that they're probably going to try to, shoehorn into this one, so that the next one, to Greg's point, can be all about affordability, voter level, concepts, and something they can dare the NDP to drop them on. I'd add. So that's what we can expect next year.
Well, it will be an interesting 2 and a bit weeks until the budget is announced. And I look forward to figuring out if you guys are right or not. So Jeff and Greg, thank you very much for joining me today. I appreciate it. And thank you to the viewers for watching. I hope you will join us next time. Until then. Blue Sky Strategy Group is one of Canada's leading public affairs firms. For government relations, lobbying, and strategic communications advice across Canada, visit us at blueskystrategygroup.com. Blue Sky Strategy Group is a proud member of the Global Communications Alliance.